foundations of being a large group presenter. You know, in our last segment, we talked a little bit about audience participation and how important it is for kids to be involved with the story in order to keep their attention. And so today we're going to be talking about what types of storytelling techniques work best for the different age groups you may be teaching. The first technique I want to talk to you about is with the preschool age group, and that is using puppets. Puppets are a terrific way to keep young preschool children involved with the story. They really relate to the puppet, and it tends to be very interesting for them, and so they keep their focus. Today I'm going to be talking about David and Goliath and that Bible story as it applies to all of these different storytelling techniques. And so, for instance, with the puppet, you may have David as the puppet and maybe Goliath as the puppet if you've got, you know, a man puppet also. Another technique to use with very young children is action pantomime. So for instance, if you're talking about David filling his sling, you can have the children putting their stones into the sling and swinging it around. That kind of action pantomime works great with young kids. Now, thinking about older preschoolers or maybe kindergarten age children, they also love to do that sort of action pantomime type thing, or they could do an echo pantomime in which you say, David went down to the river, and then they echo back to you, David went down to the river. He chose 5 smooth stones, and then they say 5 smooth stones. That kind of echo pantomime works great. Another technique to use is tandem storytelling, where you have 2 costumed actors come and they speak to each other. So you could have David and Goliath in costume talking together. And finally, imagination theater works great with this age of children as well. Imagination theater is when you get the kids actually costumed in Bible costumes really quickly, bring them up, maybe have an assistant get them ready, and then have them come up to the front and do some of the actions and some of the Bible storytelling with you. Now for grade school age children, you know, and also kindergarten, this works well, is a mystery box. You bring up a large cardboard box that has a lid on it and say, you know, I've got some really cool things in my mystery box this week. You take the lid off. I've got 5 stones in here. I wonder what these are for. Oh, and look at this. Look, I've got a big piece of armor. You know, and that kind of perks up kids' imaginations, gets them interested in what you're about to tell them, and sort of introduces a Bible story as well. Another thing to do with older, you know, age children is to bring in an actor just to tell the entire story sort of as a monologue. That works great. Or again, that tandem storytelling with 2 actors coming in works great. And finally, with the older kids, another thing that's really fun is to have audience participation in the form of like a game show or a radio show. One thing that we do in Kids Count is that sort of as a review of the stories that we've learned before, we bring kids up for a game show. So we might ask, you know, how many smooth stones did David have? And kids hit a ringer and answer the question, and then they get a certain amount of points. And then not only are the kids on stage participating, but then you also have the rest of the kids in the audience calling out answers as well if you ask them to. So those are a few ways to keep kids interested and to have audience participation in a whole variety of ages. So hopefully this helps, and this is your latest tip for raising kids in Christ.